We also want to thank Rabbi Grauman for preparing every week because as an it's certainly for sure that we give him some tough questions, but
Yeah.
he
Actually,
answered them and
if anybody remembers, there was a question last week towards the end of this year, and I started taking a look, and then I put it aside, and I forgot the full question. So I tried both David Hornstein and Menashe Katz, and then I realized, Scott, that I can go back to the Shiur and listen, which I think I will do because we couldn't figure out the full scope of the question, and I do want to see if I can find an answer. So, Mitzvah, after the Shiur, you'll just tell me how I go back to the archive, and I'll do that.
Okay, so I send out the list every morning. So you've got that list, and there's a link on that page that will take you to the archives.
It's the link that you sent this morning?
Right. If you take a look at the page this morning I sent out, you'll find a link on that page to prior Shiurim.
Right, very good. Okay, so Mitzvah, I'll try to do that. Okay, we're at Chof Vav Amud Aleph, the very bottom. And we started, we stopped at a point where we quoted Rav Nachman, who said that, remember we said something very interesting last week, that a person is more likely to be miyayish, to give up hope when he's together with a few people rather than with a large crowd, because his thinking is, if I'm together with a couple of people and I lost something and I ask each of those two people and they tell me, no, they don't have it, it's likely one of them is lying and they took it. So I'm miyayish. Whereas we said with a large crowd, at least he thinks that if he lost it and it's, there's a time of a regel and people come, that a finder will find it and announce and say, I found this item and who does it belong to? So he puts greater stock in recovering from a large group than from a small group. That was the premise that Rab Nachman stated. And now the Gemara, the second line from the bottom, says that we're going to see that Rab Nachman isn't just a one-off on this point. He makes this point in another place as well, which shows that the point is something that he accepts. In other words, that in a small group, you're more inclined to be miyayish, which is kind of a chiddush when you think about it. But nevertheless, he says, look, if I I'm surrounded by a couple of people, they likely have it, and I told them, and I asked them, and they say no. What am I going to do? And we're going to see in a minute. You can't make him swear. But okay, so says the Gemara of Ozer Rav Nachman L'Tamei. Rav Nachman is consistent in his view. Domer Rav Nachman says, Roa Sela, top of Chof Vav Amud Beis. Roa Sela, Shenofel Mishnayim. If a person is walking along and he observes that two people are walking along, and a person puts a hand in his pocket, he wants to grab a handkerchief, and a sela, which is a significant coin, falls, chayiv lahachzir. He has to return it. Again, he can't turn a blind eye. My tama, who's enough of manei, loy miyayish. Because there's no yish. He sees this whole thing unfolding, and he says there's no yish. Why? My tama, who's enough of manei, lo miyayish, meima omar, because he says, mechti ina shachwina lo hava bahadoi. Elahai. There was nobody else around. In other words, he puts his hand in his pocket and he's missing his very expensive silver dollar that he had in his pocket. That means the seller fell down, and he says there's nobody else around. Nikita leva aminale antu de shakle, and I'll confront him and I'll say, you are the only one here. You took it, so please return it. So he's not miyayish. So what does that mean? He's not miyayish. That means that anybody who finds it has an achrayus to return it. So let's look at Rashi, Nekit Nalei, the very top Rashi. Mishabon Nalei Shvuas Hesis. Remember, we touched on it last week, but we said that midrabanan, you can make a shvua, you can force someone to make a shvua, but you can only make it when you have a certainty that he was the one who did it. I mean, obviously, you don't know, but there's nobody else, so it has to be him. And that's why we said when you have three people, you can't make a Shavuos Hesses because you're not sure which of the two people. And you have to have a certainty in your mind that it's that person, because he's the only one who could have taken it. Says Rashi, you make a Shavuos Hesses, right? Because when he touches his pocket and he can't find it, so what are we saying here? We're saying that you can force the other person to make a Shavuos Hesses. If he's reluctant to make a Shavuos Hesses, okay, then the Chayre, he's the person who took it. But let's say he makes the Shvuah. If he makes the Shvuah, that means that he's saying, I didn't take it. So who took it? So even though you don't know who took it, there must have been a third person who saw it. And our Gemara says, if someone saw the seller falling, he has an achrayus to return it, because Abaya says, and we hold like Abaya, that lifnei yiyush, you have to return it. So if someone saw the coin fall out of the person's pocket, and he can't get the other person to fess up because he's making a Shavuos Hesses, no, it wasn't me, then the raw, we said, if someone saw that this coin fell down, he has got to return it. Otherwise, he's a Goslin. Because, why? Because there's no years. We know there's no years. Why is there no years? Because there's only two people. So Mamela, he says, I'm going to get it back. So in other words, it's a two-part discussion. One is the person he's walking with, Mistama, he took it. Nobody else was there. So he can make a Shavuos Hesses. He makes the Shavuah, he's no longer obligated. So the guy's going to say, you made a Shavuah? That means you didn't take it. Who took it? So, but we say there was someone who saw, so he was the finder. And if he's the finder, Mamela, he has to return it because there's no years. So that the Gemara tells us is the case by two. I mean, we're saying this for a reason, because we're going to get to the very next line, which is what's germane to us. So by two people, there's no question that there's no years. You have to make a Shavuos Hesses. And if someone was a finder, he has to return it because it was never years.
Question.
Yeah.
I'm a little confused here, this whole case. So there's two people walking along, the third person sees it, correct? Right? That's basic premise, right?
Two people walking along and somebody sees this whole thing unfold.
And the third person who sees. Okay. If the person who dropped the coin realized it right away, he would have picked it up. He realizes a half a mile later, yes, he knows he was only walking with one person, and he goes back, runs back, and he doesn't find the coin. How is it that he would know, oh, it must be somebody who was right there at the moment, as in the person he was walking with, quickly picked up the coin, or alternatively, then he swears that he didn't, or alternatively, oh, there must have been one other person. How does he know it wasn't a bunch of other people walking around? It seems odd. If he really was that cognizant of everything going on around him, he would have picked up the coin, right? He would have realized it right away. And if he's not, how does he know who else was there?
Right.
Why doesn't it become automatic years? Because if the person with him didn't do it because he swears, and he runs back, just like Menashe says, he runs back and doesn't find it, he has to assume that maybe there was a third person or 20 people, and therefore he's miyayish.
Exactly.
Right, but we're looking at it from the perspective not of the owner of the coin, but from the finder. So the Gemara is making a statement that the finder can't assume yish. Now you're right. If it happened fairly proximate to when he dropped it, then there's not a great likelihood that there was going to be a lot of people because he was walking alone. So there may have been one person, and we say, the Gemara says, looking at it from the perspective of that person, you can't assume that he was mayayish. Therefore, he has an achrayus. Remember, here in our case, he saw it. He saw the event. You're talking about a case where it was someone walks along and he never saw the two guys, and so he walks along and finds a coin. Okay, true. When he finds a coin, and there's nobody around, then you're right. You can't make certain assumptions and say that he has enough achrayus to return it. There's nobody around. But we are speaking from the perspective of the raw, of the one who saw it. So he saw this unfold, and he says to himself, I have an achrayus here because it's lifnei yish. Now, why would he assume it's lifnei yish? Because again, what's going to go through his mind is there's two people walking. I know the halacha. I know that he can make a shiur heses and he has to swear and he didn't take it. And I know the truth because he's going to swear he didn't take it because he didn't. So the Gemara is only telling us that the premise is that the person who saw it really has to return it because there's no alternative. That's how this Gemara is approaching this question. So to your point, yeah, I mean, if other people find it later on and there's no connection to the two people who were walking, Memela, he has to he can keep it because there's no reason for him to announce it because he doesn't know from anything.
Is there a
But
precondition?
this is only the prelude to what we really want to get to, which is Shlosha. Okay, go ahead.
Is there a precondition here that the one who lost it must go back and look for it first?
No.
Automatically?
No,
There's no.
not at all. No, not at all. I mean, he can. He can probably. I've done that. I mean, all of a sudden I miss something. So the natural inclination is to go back and try to walk it back and figure out where might I have lost it. I'm in the middle of nowhere with one guy, and he just told me it wasn't him, so I must have lost it. So there is a natural, probably inclination to want to go back and look, but he's not afraid. But we're talking about from the perspective of the person who saw this whole thing. From his perspective, there is no question that he has to return it because it's lifnei yish. Okay.
But one more thing though, yish or not, if I know beyond any reasonable doubt this coin, this item was lost by this person, wouldn't I just shouldn't I automatically have an obligation to return it because I know it's not a question of a simon. I saw it.
Right. So let's hold that question just for a couple of lines because we're going to be talking about what are you over? What lavim or mitzvah say whatever are you over by not returning it? So that'll come right to your question. Doesn't he have an obligation notwithstanding anything else? So let's just hold that because that in fact the Gemara is going to touch on. So anyway, so that's the case of two. Says the Gemara, right? Now, bishloisha ein chayav lahachzir. If the same thing happened and the guy was walking behind three people and he saw the coin drop, he doesn't have to return it. He has no chiyuv. My tama ahudin ofel menei vade miyayish. Because certainly that person is, remember, this is Rav Nachman's Shita. This is what Rav Nachman said earlier. So we're going to show that Rav Nachman says in this particular case, which is quite open and shut, the guy saw it, right? He saw the coin falling. Why would he not want to go ahead and return it? He's not mechuyev to return it. Why? Meima Omar, because the person who lost it will say, Mechte trei hava bahadei. So, in other words, that's our case of three. He says, what am I going to do? This one says no. This one says no. I have no brera. The person watching all of this unfold then says to himself, you know what? This guy for sure was miyayish. I can take it. We'll get to the question, Menashe, that you're asking. But from the perspective of whether or not he has a chiyuv, we see here that l'chayra he doesn't have a chiyuv because there was yish right away. Now, you can ask the question, well, but he saw it. Okay, we'll get to that in a minute. But as a practical halacha, yish opens the door. And whether someone accidentally walked by or someone saw it from afar, technically speaking, he doesn't have to return it because the requirement is yish. Once we know we have yish, no one is mechuyev. You may have ulterior. I mean, there may be other reasons to want to return it, but there's no chiyuv of returning it. So here we see he has no chiyuv, and this is consistent with what he says on Daf Chav Vav and Aleph on the bottom, where we had Rav Nachman introduce the question of three people. You don't have to return it because there's no shvur required. and each person is going to deny it, of course he's going to be miyayish. He didn't see the finder. He didn't see someone behind him, a couple of 100 yards. So he's going to say, wait a minute, someone stole it. One of these two guys stole it, and it's not fessing up. What am I going to do? I have no recourse. I can't take him to Bezdin. I can't make him swear, nothing.
Rabbi,
Why
Rabbi,
isn't he
when you-
required to announce it in Bezdin?
Say it again?
Why isn't he required to announce it?
Because he's not required to announce it because there was already years. Once there's years, and he knows that person was miyayish because he saw what was unfolding, then he has no technical requirement to go and clap and tish and said, did anybody lose such and such? Again, there's maybe other reasons to do it, but technically he's already had the magic thing. The magic bullet here is years, and he saw that he was miyayish because he knew that with three people, if he can't get one of those two people to give it to him, he lost it.
So what, as far as what he is exactly the observer is observing,
Yeah.
is he seeing an object falling from the
Yes.
midst of this crowd of three people? And he obviously can't know which pocket of which person it came from, then it's a slam dunk. So he's just seeing something either falling from someone from party X, Y, or Z, or he just sees something on the ground.
No. We introduced this segment by saying Rosh Nofal. He saw that
Sees
it
it
fell.
fall.
So if it falls from two, he can't make an assumption of years. If it falls from one of three, he makes an assumption of years because by having three people, Rav Nachman establishes a rule that the true owner will be miyayish, because if neither of the two who were the obvious finders, let's say, come forward, then he has no recourse. He can't take them to court. He can't do anything. And he's just going to have to assume that one of them is stealing.
the one with the three, did he see it or is he the one that picked it up?
The one that picked it up was not one of the three. He was someone who saw it from afar.
Well, isn't it his obligation though to tell the fellow that one of them took it?
So that's the very question that we are negotiating or litigating here, is what is his responsibility when he sees that? When he sees it coming from one of three, sure. I mean, Hoshev Teshivim is a tremendous mitzvah, and we talked about Lefnim Neshuras Adin, right? We talked about someone being a good Samaritan, even though the din, the halacha doesn't require it. He should be the one to go the extra mile. That goes without question. But let's say he's not a good Samaritan. Let's say he says, if I'm required, I'll do it. If I'm not doing anything. So he sees this, and he's enough of a scholar to say, wait a minute. I remember from my days learning Bava Metzia that when three people are walking and someone loses it, there's instant yish, because he won't necessarily get it back from one of the two. And remember that the finder knows that the two people didn't pick it up because he's watching. So he knows that each of those two people are going to say, I don't have it. The owner is going to assume one of them is lying and stealing from him. The finder knows the truth. He knows that neither of them picked it up because he saw it. He saw them drop it, keep walking, and then he comes along and finds it. But in his mind, he's going to say, I can keep this because I just saw what happened, and the true owner is going to be miyayish right away.
Well, then he's
Yeah.
actually an accomplice of it, because if he goes ahead and says nothing and the owner accuses somebody
Yeah,
and embarrasses him and he wasn't the one, he's just as guilty as the one that stole it.
well, I hear your point. And again, we're going to go through in a minute some scenarios about what the halacha is, and you'll be surprised. But your point is well taken. L'chayra, he knows what's going on and he should do something. But black letter law, is he required? Is he absolutely required to do it? Answer is no. He should. You're 100% right, David. He should. And if you'll permit, let's just in a minute go through a couple of scenarios that the Gemara gives us about when you should when you should return an item. But your point is good. but that's lefnim mishuras hadin. It's not a requirement. It's something he should do, but it's not a requirement. So let's just stop and we'll in a minute discuss that. Okay. Inikitna ve'ena yochel hashivo betana shema she'enish born betana shema. Right. We said there's no shuas hesses. Al osan hashnuim b'mishnah ve'elinish born shelo betana v'im taima homa kama years also liyadei. When it came to his hand before years, mukma halacha kabaya b'yal kagam. Amrin the most made a yada. Remember, we have this discussion. When does a person really know that he loses something? So we said that people have a habit, which I think we can maybe agree, that when you have some money in your pocket, you're tapping your pocket. You're tapping your pocket pretty frequently. I know that that's probably an instinct that many of us have. So we want to sort of make sure that what we have is in our pocket. And he's tapping, and all of a sudden it's not there. So the instant that it's not there, says the Gemara, that when he's going with two people, he immediately will say, did you find a coin? Or did you find a coin? In other words, this will all happen fairly immediate. He's not going to wait a half a mile to turn around to his two friends and say, did you find a coin? He just tapped his pocket and the money's not there. So the person who's observing all this watches it and sees the interchange, because the guy's tapping his pocket right away, and he sees that the two people are shrugging their shoulders as if to say, I don't have it. He knows Manela that person is going to be miyayish, because as the Gemara said, he's going to ask the two people, either of them will say no, and he has no grounds to accuse either of them. He can't. So this will happen fairly instantaneously to the whole event. And that's the point, is that the finder is then going to look at this and say, okay, I'm imputing Yiyush because I just saw what happened, and therefore I can keep it. So, okay, but we'll ask the question in a minute. All right, let's go weiter. Omar Rava. So Rava is trying to sort of find some silver lining in this whole event as to why, even with three people, you might be able to recover. Amar Rava, this which we say, that by three, a finder doesn't have to return it. So he's introducing a new theory, which is that, wait a minute, just because there were three doesn't mean that the finder who's observing all this shouldn't return it. Why? Because if the object lost was worth at least 3 prutas, which was the standard. Now, the halacha is that something has to be chashuv for you to have a responsibility to return it. A pruta, let's just say it's a penny, whatever it is. If it's worth less than a penny, then you're not machoyev in any event to return it, no matter what. Even if he wasn't miyayish, he wasn't miyayish, you have no obligation to return something that is not a shava pruta. Says Rava, you know what? I'm going to tell you a circumstance where with 3 people, he still has to return it. How? Because if you have an item that fell that's worth 3 prutas, there's 3 people walking. So it's worth at least 3 prutas, meaning a pruta for every individual, right? Chayev lahachzir. Why my tama? Why is he chayev lahachzir? Ema shutfaninu v'lo miyayesh. Remember, the reason why the finder who's observing doesn't have to return it, because he definitely says there was Yiyush. Once there's Yiyush, then again, we can argue he should be a good guy. There's no basic halacha to return. That's Lefnim Sadin, and he's not a tzaddik. All right, so he doesn't have to return. But if it's 3 prutas, which means that it's an item of value, says Rava, you have to return it. He's not miyayish. Why is he not miyayish? Because there's a possibility that among the 3, one of the 3 said, you know what? I'm giving you my chelek. So in other words, okay, Okay, I'm sorry. That's the next scenario. The first scenario here is it's worth 3 prutas and it's chashuv, so that the owner is going to take on partnership with the other two, not just he owns it and the other two are walking with him. The 3 of them are a partner to this item, and therefore, if they're partners, he won't be miyayish because these other 2 people have a vested interest in the coin. So Rabbi is introducing a chiddush that when you have an item that has value to each of them, meaning it's at least 3 prutas, a person will not be miyayish. Let's look at Rashi. Ema shutfaninu b'sela azu. In this coin, they're all shutfin, v'ne'emonim ze al ze, and they have ne'emonis, they have veracity. Ve'eno echad choshed es chavero b'chelko. One person is not choshed his friend on his portion. V'lechi mishmish b'kiso. So when he taps his pocket below matzah, lo yayish. He's not going to be miyayish. Meima ama echad min hashutfin matzah. One of my partners found it. L'tzareni hu shosek, and they're teasing me. The nimsak shabos liyadzer lifnei yiyush bo liyado. So the finder, if he's going to pick it up, when is he going to pick it up? Before Yiyush. Because the whole premise of what we just said before is with 3 people is that, wait a minute, he's never going to get it back if there's 2 people and he's going to ask each of them and no, they won't give it back to him. So he has no choice but being miyayish. So the finder imputes Yiyush to the fellow who lost the coin. But when you have 3 partners, what's the guy who drops is going to say, no problem. My partners, they're just teasing me. Oh, no, I don't have it. I don't have it. But we're all own the coin. So therefore, there won't be years. So the finder, if he picks it up, has a chiyuv to return it. Why? Because it's lifnei yiyush. And remember, we're saying yiyush is that's the border here. It's lifnei yiyush or ache yiyush. So says Rava, there's a circumstance where with 3 people, you still have to return it because there's no yiyush. Why? Because they're partners. So that's Rava's chiddush here. Rava wants to say that the finder can never impute yiyush because it's possible. Again, he doesn't know. He's standing 100 yards back. He watches all this, and Rava says he must, at least in his mind, consider that they were partners. And if there's partners, there's no yiyush.
So we must assume this is an indissoluble partnership. They can't, 2 of them can't freeze this 3rd guy out and go cash in the coin and, leave him with nothing.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. All
right. Exactly right. That's Rava's theory.
Okay.
Now, there's an Ika de Omre on Rava's theory, right? Wherever you have a theory, you always have another view. So Ika de Omre, Omer Rava, Afagav de Lesbe Elishava Elishte Prutus, Chayv Lahachzir, Maitama, Emeshutve Ninu, Vechabene Achule Lemasne Gabe Chavero. So I started saying this, but I misspoke because that's the Ika de Omre. So what is the Ika Omre? So the first ruling of Rava is that it's worth 3 prutas, and therefore each one is a chelik, a shutef, and therefore when he drops it, he's not worried. The Ika de Omre says, even if it's worth 2 prutas, which means nobody has a pruta value, right? When you have 2 prutas and 3 partners, nobody owns a pruta. So the chayra, if nobody owns a pruta, there's no Shabbos Aveda, right? We just got through saying that in order to have Shabbos Aveda, you have to have an object that has a pruta. And here, there are 3 partners, right? And the whole thing is worth 2 prutas. Everybody owns what? 2/3 of a pruta. Forget about it, no Shabbos Aveda. So he says, no, my Tama, you still return it. We make an assumption that one of the partners was Michael his chelik to the others. I mean, again, this Gemara is maybe it's not practical, but the Gemara wants us to be thinking about what the options are. Rava comes in with an option and says, not so fast with Nachman. You're telling me when there's 3 people, the game is over, there is Yiyush, and he can find it. Says Rava, not so fast. It's possible that they were partners. And if they're partners, this finder shouldn't jump the gun and say it's mine because he lost it and he's going to be miyayish. He's not going to be miyayish. So Rav is introducing a chiddush that a finder shouldn't jump the gun and say it's mine. That's the point, because he has to at least think, you know what, maybe they're partners. The Iked de Amre is going one step further and saying, you know what, Rav is right, but he's right even if it's not worth 3 prutas. He's right even if it's worth 2 prutas, because one of the 3 might be miyayish his chelek. He'll sort of give over his chelek to the other 2 so that there will be shava pruta for each person. Again, it's an exercise in thought. So the Iked de Amre is saying, you know, you finder, don't jump the gun, even if it isn't worth 3 prutas. So that's how the Gemara, that's what the Gemara is trying to teach us here, is that the finder shouldn't be quick on the trigger. He's arguing with Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman says, no way, he's miyayish. Rav is saying, no, not so fast. Maybe there isn't yiyush. And maybe this finder needs to stop and think a minute whether or not he's really doing something improper by not announcing it, Jay, and saying, I found something, to give the person an opportunity to say, oh yeah, I lost it, down the street on University and whatever, in the middle of everything. Sure, I lost it. So that's the Gemara's thinking here, that the Rava disputes Rav Nachman, and then there's an Iked de Amre that even goes further in Rava and saying you don't have to have 3 prutas. Now, to say that 2 people would be Michael, that's already I think a step that the Gemara is not willing to accept. One person of the 3 being Michael and saying, yeah, I'm Michael to you too, which is why if it's worth 2 prutas, we can still argue. But if it's worth 1 pruta, we don't assume that both of the other partners will Michael to him. That's just a general proposition. So in any event, that's the discussion in the Gemara. Rav Nachman is the Tameh. We know what Rav Nachman says, and he's consistent. And Rava says, no, I don't really hold with what you're saying. Okay, now to the questions that we asked before. So listen to the scenario. V'amar Rava. Now there are 3 lavim or mitzvahs lo say in our Gemara here. There's a mitzvah asay of hoshev teshivim, right? You have to return it. There's a mitzvah lo saseh of lo sigzo. You shouldn't steal it. And there's a mitzvah lo saseh lo tis'alem. What is lo tis'alem? You'd be surprised. Hoshev teshivei means you have to return it. Lo tis'alem, you shouldn't look at it and not return it. In other words, the hoshev teshivim is of a mitzvah saseh. Lo tis'alem comes to tell you you shouldn't walk by, see it, know what to do, and don't do it. Right? That's different. So we have a lo saseh of lo sigzo and a lo saseh of lo tis'alem and a mitzvah saseh of hoshev teshivim. Now, let's look at the Gemara. V'amar Rava, and Rava. So now we're since we're talking about Rava, we're bringing other instances of Rava's of what Rava said. Raw seller shenafla. If a person saw a seller that fell out of a person's pocket, we're talking about one person. Person's walking along, another one is walking 50 yards behind. He sees him pull out a handkerchief from his pocket, out falls a coin, and he sees the whole thing. What is he supposed to do? Okay, so now we know Yush is a barrier. Okay, not the lifnei Yush, almanas legozla. If he takes it before the person who lost the coin is meyayish, in order to steal it, oyved bekula, he violates everything. Lo sigzo, hoshev teshivim, lo suchelis ale. Those 3 things are all being violated when I walk behind you and see you dropping a coin, and know that you have not been meyayish. I violated 3 mitzvahs aseh and lo saseh. Okay, now, not only that, but listen to this. Now he's going to wait and watch, and he's going to see that the guy taps his pocket, looks all around, walks all around, and he's miyayish. I mean, he could see his shoulders slumping. I just lost my coin. So now there's Yish. But he then says, you know what? I'm going to give it back to him. The Gemara says, Matanahu diyorvle bi'isura. The Oved. He's giving the guy back a matana, and he's still over those 3 lavin. You hear this? You have intent to steal it, and you wait for the yish. You get your yish. Now I'm picking it up, and then I have remorse. I want to give it back. Says the Gemara, you can't. If in your mind your intent was to steal it, farfallen, you've lost. You can give the guy a matana, but you can't undo what you did. That's how strong the Gemara says this is. So we see that that the machshava, the machshava is what really counts here. So let's take a look at Rashi.
Excuse me, Rabbi, the Gemara doesn't explain why.
No, the Gemara doesn't explain why. The Gemara just says it's a matana, and you can't do it. So Rashi says, "Ra sela shenafla blogosin and mishnayim." We're not talking about from 2. We're talking about from 1, right? One person drops a coin, another person watches it. Not the lifnei yiyush shelo shah kidei lishamsho zeh bekisa. He doesn't wait to see whether the person is tapping his pocket. He picks it up and runs. So in the instant that he picked it up and didn't see the guy tapping his pocket, he knows there was no yish. Because the question is, how do you know there's no yish, right? So Rashi wants to give us an instance where the guy keeps walking and the tapping of the pocket seems to be the signal, right? The tapping of the pocket is the signal that the person, oh my gosh, I just lost my coins. And at that point, arguably there's yish. But if the guy doesn't tap his pocket, you can assume he doesn't even know he lost the coins yet. If he doesn't know he lost the coins yet, and this guy's picking it up, he's clearly picking it up before yish. He's now over lo sigzo, al tesale, Ashef Teshive, everything. Says the Gemara, but wait a minute. He has charata. Too late. You can give the guy a matana, but you can't undo the geneva or the violation of those other mitzvahs. It's a myridic thing, because the guy wants to do tshuva. I'm not letting him do tshuva. Now, lest you think that this is accepted by everybody, I will tell you that there's a tremendous machlokes rishonim on what this Gemara means. Whether the Gemara actually means that you can't go back and do a good thing. And if you'll take a quick look at Tosfos, the Tosfos Matana Ba'almahi Diyorvle, right? It's about 2/3 down, where the Gemara says, no, you can't retract. You're doing a matana. The im time of a halolav, the lo sigzo mikri nituk la'aseh. We have an exact Gemara in Bava Kama by Shluch Hakain, or Chulin, actually, this is Gemara, is that lo sigzel you can fix it. In Ken Kiva and the Inyan Gizela lo mikra matana, if you can fix it, gam hashif teshiva and lamalo tikein. Why can't you fix hashif teshiva? In other words, you're telling me you can't fix it. You can fix it, because the Gemara says that by sigzel you can take it away. So if you can take away gazela, you can also give hashef teshiva. So why not? So listen. The Tosfos answer to Yeshloma, the loy koi. No. This Gemara is not going on lo sigzel and hashef teshiva. Ela alav de lo suchelis alim she'over shelo hechzer kodim yish. That the Gemara, when the Gemara says farfallen, it doesn't mean on lo sigzal and a hashef teshiva. For sure, you can return it, and not be over on lo sigzal and fulfill the mitzvah Hashem Teshiva. But you can no longer fulfill Altis Ale, because Altis Ale means you shouldn't walk by and see something and not do the right thing. That's already gone. You can't undo that, because he did Losis Ale. Lois Sigzel, fine, you can repair. Hashem Teshiva, you can repair. But Lois Alem, you can't repair. So that's what Tosfos is saying. Now, there are other Rishonim who disagree with Tosfos and say, forget about it, you lost everything. Tosfos, on the other hand, is saying you didn't lose everything. You lost 2 of the mitzvahs, but not the 3rd. So I'm just pointing that out, that this is a complicated, because you said it, Jay. The Gemara says what it says. The Gemara says, Matana, it's all gone. You lose everything. Not so fast is that there was an interpretation here that you don't lose everything, and that you only lose 2 things of the 3 Isurim. 2 that you can repair, and 1 that you can't repair, because you can't repair that you didn't see it the first time.
So the question, one thing I still don't understand is, does this Gemara depend on somebody tapping their pocket?
Because tapping the pocket is a siman that the person is aware that he lost it. How would we know he's miyayish? In other words, in an objective sense, how do you know someone's miyayish? How can you impute yish into somebody's mind? Gemara says that it's human nature that when a person walks, he's sort of feeling his pocket, And the minute he feels his pocket and doesn't see it, then there's already the beginning of Yish. If he's, in other words, we're imputing Yish. Maybe the guy isn't the Yish. You're right. Maybe he's not willing to be, but as a matter of objective purpose, the Gemara is saying that is the way you can tell if someone is Miyayish, is if he taps his pocket and it's not there. We can argue that that's not really maybe a valid way of looking at it, but that's the Gemara's objective way of determining Yish.
But it picks something that may not be a reliable thing. If a person nowadays is talking on the phone, he's not even thinking about the stuff in his pocket.
Right.
He can be distracted for 100,000 reasons, and the fact that he's not tapping the pocket doesn't really tell you anything about what's going on in his head.
So you make a good point, but it's interesting that at that time they were probably, there was enough going on that was the standard. Again, we're talking about a couple thousand years ago. So what was the standard of Yiyush? Says the Gemara, the standard is that a person normally, now the norms change. So today, maybe nobody has coins in the pocket. I mean, have a credit card in your back pocket, so you're not worried about it. And all of a sudden, you find your credit card missing. But you didn't tap your pocket to see if you had your credit card there. It's the norm of the time that's what people would do. So if you want to find an objective way of defining Yush, it's he taps his pocket and can't find it anymore. Yeah.
Rabbi, I just come back from having open heart surgery at Fannie, and I went back to work at Fannie Mae, and I had all my people in my office, and I have a pen that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs gave me. It was a Mont Blanc, and I kept it in my pocket. And so I'm sitting there at the desk, and all my people are in front of me, and I went to get my pen, and I don't have it, and I tapped it, and I went, because it's not there. And everybody thought that I was having a heart problem because I had just come back from surgery. This is my first day. But I was tapping my pocket because I was looking for my pen.
Right.
But I didn't give up. I found the pen.
You found the pen.
For
Again,
being Mekayim Hishamer Lecha Pen.
So in any event, look, it's hard for us to sort of go back so many years and say, was that really what they were doing? But at that point in time, the Gemara is telling us that was a standard. So if someone saw it, he can at least assume that there was no Yish here because he didn't see him right away checking to see if he lost it. But in any event, so this Gemara, it has a little bit of a controversy to it because it's not clear from the Gemara. When the Gemara says Matanahi v'isura the Ovid, what did he do? So according to some Rishonim and Taisus included, the only thing he did was he was over loisis ale. He wasn't over the others because he did return the others. Others say no. We take a very strict view. You had an opportunity, you didn't take it. You're considered a ganef and everything else.
So just to be clear, because I don't understand the Hebrew, there's three things. You shall not rob, you shall surely return, and you shall not hide.
You should not hide, meaning seeing something and not acting on it. The
Okay,
losis
so-
ala means you see the item and you don't say, wait a minute, I got to do something with this.
So what is Tosafos saying that you violated which one?
You shall not hide
You shall not hide.
because you hid.
Okay.
And you can't undo that. You can't undo the fact that you hid. You can undo the fact that you are doing the right thing by returning it, but you can't undo the moment that you saw it. You have an obligation to hide, and you hid.
Okay.
That you can't take back.
But the others too, you didn't rob because you're giving it back,
That's it.
and you surely
And
will return it. You are returning.
of returning it, right? So Tosas says only one you're over, not all three.
Tough to legislate.
Tough to legislate, right? Now, let's look at the next instance. Not the lifnei yush amanas lahachzira. A man is walking and he sees someone drops a coin, and he says, "I'm going to pick it up." I didn't see him tapping his pockets, so I know he wasn't miyayish, and I'm going to return it to him. So his kavanah was to return the item to the person. He's a good Samaritan and he's doing the right thing. Then he sees the loser, the guy who lost it, tapping his pockets. And what is that? That means he's now miyayish. So he says, you know what? I'm not such a good guy. Niskavin ligzela. I'm going to keep it. His intent was to pick it up and return it. That was before Yush. Now he sees the guy being miyayish. He says, wait a minute. He's being miyayish. What am I, a fool? I'm going to keep it. Right? Oiver mishum hoshev teshivein. He doesn't violate lo sigzo, because at the time that he picked it up, his intention was to return it. So it's not lo sigzo. He's not over lo sis alein, because he didn't hide. He picked it up and I'm asked to return it. Right? Now, he changes his mind. He can no longer be over lo sigzo, lo sis alein, because those happen at a moment in time, and the moment in time passed. So says the Gemara, the only thing he's over is Hashev Teshivim. He still didn't fulfill the mitzvah of returning it. Says the Gemara, you're only chai of one, not three. Says Rashi. Not the listenay years, yeah. Over mishum Hashev Teshivim. Lo sigzel lo shayach. There is no lo sigzel. Ela b'shas netila. When he picked it up, that's the time for Gezela. But when he picked it up, he had intention to return it. There is no lo suchalis alim, because that's for someone who covers his eyes, right? But here he intended to return it. Hilkach, says Rashi, and tell us amanas lahachzir. Well, acha years niskaven legoizlo, and ein kam is alein, aval hoshev teshivim ika mishanatal achi yishbana. Hoshev teshivim means you have to return it to the guy's hand. Did he return it? No. So he's only over on hoshev teshivim because he never returned it. But since at the time he picked it up, he intended to return it, there's no gezela. And there's no losis alein because he didn't hide. So in other words, your intent is what triggers all of this. So if your intent is to return it, there's no longer certain isurim. But now you have to go through with it. You have to actually return it. If you don't return it, then you violated the mitzvah saseh of Hashev Teshivim. Okay? Now comes the third possibility. Hamtin law achinish yeshu habalim benafla. Let's say he's walking and watches all of this, and he sees that the person who lost it agitates, walks around, walks back, walks forth, and he does nothing. He just stands there and watches. Okay, so he's watching this. He didn't miyayish, he didn't not miyayish. So he's walking around. Now he waits until the fellow who lost it realizes that I'm not going to find this. Then he's miyayish. Not right away, but like you say, Jay, he's not giving up. He's not tapping his pocket and saying, I give up. I want to search and find. So he searches and doesn't find. What's the halacha? The notla, and then he takes it. In this particular case, he's not over like sigzol. He's not over Hashev Teshivim because the guy was miyayesh. Right? He didn't steal it. He just sat there and was a passive observer. He didn't steal. He saw the guy was miyayesh. We know that after years, there's no longer a mitzvah Hashev Teshivim, but he is over the lav of Losuchelis Alein because he hid. At the time that he saw it happen, that's the time he should have jumped into action, and he didn't. So he's over Losuchelis Alein, but he's not over the other three. So this is fascinating that in this timeline with these three isurim or mitzvahs say, mitzvahs lo say, depending on what you do when, intentional or otherwise, you either over alav or not over alav. So that's why this is not an easy Gemara, because the Rishonim, they clear on all of this and they say, wait a minute, this doesn't sound right. This doesn't sound right. So at the end of the day, we have this machlokes. And at least from our standpoint, the best thing is to do the right thing and even go lefnim mishur sadin if you can. But the mitzvah of Shabbos Aveda is an important mitzvah, and you see that there's other two lavim attached to Hashabbos Aveda. It's not just returning it; it's the potential of lo sigzal and lo suchalis ale. And sometimes when you violate it, you want to do tshuva. You can't do tshuva because you missed the boat. You miss the opportunity, so you can do some correction, but you can't do every correction. So that kind of covers, some of the earlier questions. When you look at it from this standpoint, you see what your achrayus is. Your achrayus is always to return, as Hasidim and when I say Hasidim, I mean that we are righteous. We should do more than just the minimum. If you know it, do it. Why not? Here you're going to wait to years, and after years you're going to play the game and say, "Oh, he's miyayish, now I can keep it." That's all fine and good, but that's not what a erlich hayid does. I mean, a pious Jew says, "Wait a minute, I saw him lose it. Why am I playing games? Let me pick it up and return it to him." That should be the standard. Unfortunately, it may not always be, but that should be the standard. And as a result of that, this is what the Gemara tells us. Yeah.
The opportunities of this whole story start the minute he sees it and doesn't do anything about it. Right away, he's ranking up a losase because he can react immediately.
Right, exactly right.
And the Hebrew word elam is blind, isn't it? Like an elam cheresh.
Right. So
really, the best translation is he's turning a blind eye.
He's turning a blind eye. Very good. That's exactly what he's doing. Well, he shouldn't. They use the term hide. He shouldn't hide from it. But hiding means that he's turning a blind eye. That he's
right. But it's literally the Hebrew word. So yeah, I think that's the best English translation. He's just turning a blind eye, purposefully, if you will.
Right. So take a look at Rashi. Rashi says, Hamtin law, he waits, Bishor, Shara, Osa, at the time he sees the thing unfolding, and he just stands there. He doesn't try to return it. That's Pshat Hamtin, he's waiting. Because he hid his eyes. Right, you could say blind, but he hid his eyes. So because he hid his eyes, that is a losase. And you shouldn't
turn the blind eye. That's
the blind eye.
English
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But can't he correct that at the very end, even if a lot of time went by? Ultimately, if he does the right thing, it knocks that Isser out as well, doesn't it? Or not?
No, the teretz is that Lo Suchalis Alein is a moment in time.
Oh, okay.
It's a moment in time when you can chap that mitzvah.
And it's a very early moment in
And it's a
time.
very early moment. Remember, the flip side is Hoshef Teshivem. At the end of the day, he returns it because he does tshuva. So
Right.
he did the right thing.
Right, but
He's
below
a hero.
Yisrael,
He's a hero, but he didn't do, he violated Lo Sufa L'Isam.
What if the matana is more than the value of the lost object? He's still not
Right.
square?
Right. I mean, look, you can go a little bit further and say that, you know what, he was a Messiah, the other guy, because the other guy, it was a very valuable object, a diamond, something, and he lost it, and he had a lot of tsar. I mean, he worried. He was very, very upset.
Yeah.
You could, all those things happened because you turned a blind eye. So even though you returned it to him, and at the end he said, thank you, thank you, thank you, I want to give you a reward, you know, but in his heart, the guy knows I could have done this an hour ago and saved him all of the tsar. So that's why L'Suchel is Alein is an immediate thing. And once you miss it, you've missed that window. You can still do good, Hashem Teshivim, but you can't do L'Suchel is Alein. Right. So let's do this last piece of Gemara before the Mishnah.
Just
Amar Rava, also a very interesting thought. Hi man, the chazid nafal zuzim mechavre. Bechalso, if I'm walking along the beach and I see that someone is holding a valuable object and it falls into the sand, and we all know that when it falls into the sand, you know, it may well be lost. Ashkeche b'shakle, and I pick it up. I go walk behind him. I pick it out of the sand. Says the Gemara, "L'machayev lahadrale." You don't have to return it. It's amazing. The guy dropped a ring into the sand, and he's walking, and you walk behind him, and you start digging with your hands, and you find it. Lo machayev lahadra. My Tama. This is unbelievable. Why? Who did nafal minei miyayish? A person who's walking along the sand and drops it, farfallen. I lost it. Now, wait a minute. There's a caveat here. Afagap the chazeh de ase arbala, the marble. Rashi tells us chelsa ben achoilis is in the sand. Arbala is kivra, some kind of an instrument. When you walk on the beach, you see many people having these metal, instruments that ping metal, right? Especially
Very
at the end of the
treasured.
day at a beach. If you're ever at a beach, you watch these people walking along the beach with these items. They're scanning the sand. Says the Gemara, even though you see him panning the sand, afal gaf the chazid the asa arbel of marble, even though you watch him doing it, Meima Omar, you can say, Ki hecha de nafel minei didi hachi nafel min shachrina mishkachna midi. So listen to this thinking. Instead of returning it to him, we're saying that he was miyayish. He has this machine that he's looking to pick up metal. Yeah, I lost mine. Forget about it. But I'm not above taking the machine and trying to find somebody else's lost item. So the Gemara is actually splitting it up and saying what you lost, you're miyayish. What you're trying to find somebody else's yish. So by trying to find someone else's yish, I'm not going to impute that you weren't miyayish. That's what Rava is telling us. I mean, it's consistent with what we're talking about. If someone loses something in an ocean or in a sand, he's not getting it back. Maybe it's by some luck, but he's
And
not.
then we're witnessing him sifting the sand with his hands.
He's witnessing him.
Then he's still not miyayish. I'm sorry, they didn't have the metal detectors back then.
No.
It was a sieve where they put the sand in it and then they just
A
shake it
sieve,
around.
yeah. You could say a sieve, right? Doesn't have to be a machine.
But he's doing it right away. I mean,
But he can't find it. He
But
walks
he's not
away.
looking for somebody else's, he's looking for him.
He's trying to find it. He can't find it. He walks away. This guy comes along, watches the whole thing, takes his hand in the sand, rummages and finds it. Does he have to return it or not?
No, the other guy was miyayish
He was
because
miyayish. Now, later on in the day, he sees him taking this sieve or this machine or whatever you want to call it, and he's running around over there. So why is that not a sign that he wasn't miyayish?
It's a sign that this was working on his mind and he thought, God, maybe there's a way, and he went back to look for this specific item. That's,
That says the Gemara, no. Exactly what you're saying is not correct, that he was miyayish. He gave up. Now he is trying to see, okay, maybe I'll find somebody else's yish. That's how the Gemara is interpreting it. You were miyayish. Now, new parsha, you're going around sifting, and maybe you'll find something. And if you find something, now, again, the other guy just took the item because he followed him and put his hand in, and so he really has the item. But he has the item after years. The other guy says, I was miyayish. Maybe a happenstance, I'll find it. But
all was good until he came back later. That ruins everything because he proved to us.
He doesn't know what the location is.
Well,
He doesn't know exactly where.
Oh,
he-
it's a different location.
Exactly. Jay's right.
location, yeah.
Yeah, that's
But
exactly
not only
right. He
that,
may
but
have
how would
known-
you know?
No,
But
no,
how would you
yeah.
know? You picked up the item after he walked away, and you're going to go back home, and he comes back later. You didn't see him come back, so
Well, you
he's
must have seen it because that's asking the question.
No, he knew that the guy was sifting later on, but you just said it. I think is that he may not even be in the right place.
Unless it's in that same spot and there was a
the
marker, there
vicinity.
was a landmark, you
In
know.
the
or
vicinity, he knew it was. He knew in the vicinity where he was. You remember there was a house there, more or less, and he was able to think. But the chiddush here is that once there's years, and even if the guy later tainas charata from the years, I'm still going to try to find it.
Right,
The years happened.
right.
So the Gemara gives us all kinds of scenarios to tell us when a person is miyayish, what you should do, what lav you're over, what lav you're not over. So really, it covers the full gamut of halacha. So again, we're talking about it. This is the normal way of approaching it. If someone's leflim l'shur sadin, which we should all try to be, then it's not the end of the world. You find it, you return it, even if whatever you see. But the Gemara this is a minimum standard, not a maximum standard.
It's almost a kal vachomer. If tapping the pocket is indication of being miyayish, then surely a guy on all fours scrambling around with a sieve in a very desperate manner would certainly be proof of the same. At least it would seem by just common sense. True, he could be looking like everybody else is looking with their little treasure finders, but a treasure finder guy is not. There's no desperation involved. I don't know, whatever.
Right.
So yish is not reversible here, right?
The years is not reversible.
And that's just like the other Hashavas.
Yeah. And remember, in the previous Gemaras, we had imputed years if
Right.
someone loses something in an ocean or in a river that overflows because of a major rain. It's imputed years.
All right,
Right,
so
right.
You don't
even his
know what's in his
looking,
mind. He
Right.
imputes years because in the norm, a person is going to say, I lost this, far fallen.
and so even his looking is a Hail Mary kind of thing.
That's correct.
But,
That's correct. That's correct. So that's where years is. So, okay, fine. So we finished the Gemara. Next week we'll pick up from the Mishnah, but it's a fascinating, again, this whole machlokes of Nachman Rava. It's fascinating how the different Amoraim made these interpretations, and then the later commentaries, the Rishonim, even the Achronim, argue over what their intent was, because we see from this Gemara of Matana Ba'alma that it's not so simple. That's a very big machlokes between the Rishonim and others, is what that means. Does it mean he gave up everything or not? Taisus and other Rishonim say, no, he didn't give up everything. But from the Gemara, as you pointed out, Jay, just the Gemara alone, you wouldn't know. So in any event, it's opens your mind to thinking about a lot of different things.
What page are we resuming on?
So we're gonna pick up on Chav Vav Amud Beis, the Mishnah next week. Matzah B'Chanus. That's what we're up to. We'll pick up Mitzvah next week from there.
So it sounds like they spent a lot more than 1 hour discussing all
I
of
think
these
so.
applications.
I think so. Yeah, I think they were sitting around the Beis Medrash
For
probably.
years, probably.
Yeah, plumbing the depths of this. Right. Exactly. And after they did, the succeeding generations
Started
still
on-
didn't understand what they were saying. And we're to try to understand, right? Okay, maybe it's a shame.
This follows suit, so to speak, because if you look, in order for the Besdin to put somebody to death, they have to have, or for any crime, really, they have to have two aidem, they have to have the agreement, they have to be warned twice, they have to, there's so many stipulations before they can find somebody guilty.
Well,
So,
which is why in the history of Besdin, and the Gemara tells us, again, did they ever actually implement, because of all of the steps that you have to take, many of the warnings of the different things that they Yochayev Misa for never happened because of the fact that it was too complicated to fulfill, right? I mean, a perfect example is the mitzvah in the Torah of Ben Sorah Amora, which is a very powerful event of a child who's not who rebels against his parents, and yet, so you read it on its face, but when you get into the depths of it, you realize that it's, if not impossible, virtually impossible for it to happen. But that doesn't take away from the lesson. So very often you have because remember, the circumstantial evidence is not evidence under the Torah. So many cases are only resolved through circumstantial evidence because there was no eyewitness. If you don't have eyewitness, you can't go forward. And you're right, you have to have hasra. If you don't have hasra, you also can't punish. So it's not meant to be, when it's a eye for an eye, that you take an eye. It's meant as a illustration of what the standard is, and hopefully you shy away from not meeting that standard. That's
so it
really
all boils down to, whatever you do, the final ending is you're going to be judged by Hashem.
that's right. It's b'dei shemayim, not b'dei adam. That's absolutely correct.
So then, if you look at it that way, what do
But
we
you should
really
be
have?
no less concerned about b'dei shemayim than you would b'nei adam. Somehow we're more concerned about punishment or anything of our fellow man, and we sort of disregard that the Rebbeinu Shalom is there watching, and at the end of the day, it's the Rebbeinu Shalom who's going to be the final arbiter. Many of us don't seem to think of that because it's not in our mindset to worry about something that is ethereal, that is not, we can't see it, we can't hear it, we can't feel it, and that's human nature. That's look, when Adam in the Gan Eden, when the whole episode of the Nachash, I mean, what was he worried about? He didn't. God was watching. Why didn't he think about that? Because that's not something that was on his mind at the time. I mean, again, that's not human nature. So human nature is to, again, you have people who have a more advanced sense of righteous, and that's called L'fnei Mishur Sadin. We call that, being, you don't have to be a chassid, to do that. You should do the right thing. But again, the minimum standard is what we are obligated to do. So in order not to steal, you have to make sure you don't violate the minimum standard. Beyond that, you do what you do. All right, Chevra. So, Baruch Hashem, we finished
Thank
it
you.
here.
Goyach, goyach.
And I will, Scott, get onto the archive and take a look at that question and hopefully maybe be able to dig something out for next week.
Goyach.
Thank you.
Zagazon to everybody.
So much.
Goyach.